With generous support from the B. Robert Williamson Jr. Foundation and Mr. Howard Abel, we introduced adaptive leadership concepts into the two sections of Practice 3 that were macro-focused. Students in these classes were then invited to apply for this fellowship opportunity, with 13 being selected and receiving a $1,000 scholarship. And then they applied the concepts to their field placement assignments. They were receiving peer-to-peer consultation along the way, and they learned a tremendous amount from each other. They learned some from us, and I have to say, for Mark and I, we learned a tremendous amount from them.
So we see the adaptive framework is helping people or holding people, accompanying people through the process of necessary change, of the loss that's involved in facing necessary change. What are the organizational practices that need to be preserved? What are the organizational practices that need to be let go? What are the new behaviors that need to be adopted? There are different stakeholders who bring their own point of view on the work based upon their values, their family, their culture, their religion, all of that, their personal experiences. And they bring that into the system, and so do we. Sometimes those values and perspectives come into conflict with one another in the form of what we call an adaptive challenge, and you'll hear about that more from the fellows.
I personally love this fellowship. As soon as I heard about it, I was like, yeah, like this is something that I want to do. It really resonated with me. As a person who wants to work in a macro field, I've always questioned why we always put laws and regulations into places, but the change that needs to occur never does. These are technical solutions to technical problems, right? Problems that we already have the know-how and the tools in order to fix. But we never look at the adaptive part, which is the part where personal habits and values and principles come into play.
And it wasn't until Practice 3 in Linda's class when Mark came in and talked about adaptive leadership, and was the proverbial light bulb went off over my head, and I was like, adaptive leadership, where have you been all my life? I've been looking for you. And I didn't even know it. After I finish my placement today, I'm going to be a school social worker here in New York City. So similar field, similar structure and system to be working in, but I know that I will approach this job not just with amazing clinical skills, but now also with this whole adaptive leadership framework, which will allow me to serve students, work with teachers, work with families, work in those systems in a much more effective and efficient way.
And a lot of times we always jump to the conclusion, we always jump to the solution. And Mark and Linda will tell us, okay, be patient. We have to dig in more. We need to get more information. We need to get more about what's people's value, what's their loyalty, and what's the culture of your agency, and also how other people, their comfort level of changing. Because the things I learned from this program is like, everyone can make change. We can do that. But how? In what way? Because a lot of time people don't want to change because this is resistant. So adaptive leadership helped me, like when you want to make change, the first you have to diagnose it. You have to diagnose it, and you have to see every lens of the issue.
Naturally, I would want to be like, oh no, everything you're doing is wrong and it's affecting the patients and you're not thinking about the patients. But what the leadership, like this fellowship taught us is like how to take a step back and look at who their loyalties are, what is the mission of the agency, how that may have changed over time, why that changed, and what's going on, and how as a social worker you can use your own power to really make a change within the agency. That as a worker you're not powerless, you can actually do something.
And what I loved was the challenge to really look at organizations the same we look at individuals. And so commonly in the space of social work, you'll hear us say, all behavior has meaning. And then we get into our field placements, and then we complain about how they function without realizing that there's a behavior that's put in place based upon loyalties and based upon ways of doing things, whether it be this has always worked, or we don't know what else to use, or there's limited funding. And so what it helped me to do, and all of my peers I would say to do, is to look at intervention, or I'd like to say innovation, very differently, whether that be policies or changes in the community, and to really work with them and be partners in helping them to co-author that change from the titles that we had.
So it's also very interesting that in Chinese traditional old saying, they say if you cannot see the full picture of a mountain, it is because you are in this mountain. Yeah, it's kind of like the same, because if you are on the dance floor, you cannot see how many people are like total are at the dance floor, but when you go to the balcony, you can see the whole picture. I guess that's why we need to like assess how many stakeholders are involving, what kind of way they have been involving, like how deep they're involving these problems.
Learning more about the adaptive leadership practice, I understood how I could exercise leadership at this horizontal level and engage my community in different ways where I could shift the needle just a little bit in this direction. I ended up sitting in a room with the board of trustees and the provost, and I could use my position as a mere intern to ask if there's any room for policy change in certain admissions and financial aid practices that didn't seem very efficient or just.
One of the things that I really tried to do in engaging people and sort of understanding their perspectives and their potential losses was also giving them back the work so that they could become engaged in creating solutions, which hopefully gives them more stake in continuing that work. It really requires empathy and being able to sort of step out of your place within the organization to see sort of the bigger picture and understand what those losses are.
The concept that resonated the most for me throughout the adaptive leadership program was the concept of competing commitments and the potential work avoidance that can happen because of it, where in order to obtain one goal or multiple goals, a loss or multiple losses must be made somewhere else within the agency, and thus creating this constant balancing act happening all of the time in order to make forward progress.
So one thing I realized is I underestimated from the beginning of this process the importance of loyalties and accounting for them. One thing I realized as it went on was that people aren't just loyal to other people or to an organization, but they're also loyal to things that aren't tangible, like their own past work, past experience. And I also found that some of my coworkers had what appeared to me to be conflicting loyalties.
As a person who will be starting out my career in social work on the younger end of the spectrum, because I came straight through from undergrad, I don't imagine that I'll be incurred much formal authority, but it's important for me to understand that I can still exercise leadership in whatever position I'm in, which I had the experience of doing through this fellowship in my internship this year.
This is beneficial to me because I never considered being in a leadership position, but learning these skills and these concepts make me feel more confident in doing that role.
It's an amazing feeling to feel like you can actually go into a system, and no matter what level you're going in there, to feel like, yes, I actually can be an agent for change here. And that's an amazing gift to have gotten.
What resonated with me with this fellowship was the fact that we learn how to think politically. And I think that as much as social workers learn how to deal with clients, we sometimes don't learn how to work politically within an organization. What is the level of engagement and how you can negotiate and understand all of this and actually have a productive work environment. And I'm going to take this for my life, and I think it was a great end to a great master's degree. Thank you very much.